Wherever you take your truck, over the road or through tough city traffic, riding with the Eaton AutoSelect transmission will cut down the wear and tear on you and your rig. It can even help you improve your mileage. It's a transmission made to work with you to get more out of every road mile. Over the next few minutes, we'll take a look at AutoSelect, and you'll find yourself driving with some world-class technology. We'll review the controls, take a good look at operation, and with a pro like yourself, we'll take AutoSelect out on the road. Let's start with a look at the system. At the heart of the AutoSelect is the rock-solid Eaton Road Ranger 10-speed, the same gearbox racking up billions of miles of trouble-free road time every year. The big difference, of course, is that there's no manual shift lever. Instead, it's been replaced with a transmission electronic control unit, or ECU, an electronic shifter, and an electronic range valve. Now, the brain of AutoSelect sits with you in the cab. The overall system ECU, on this truck it happens to be mounted in the shift tower, receives information from you, the vehicle, and the transmission ECU to shift to the proper gear. The driver command console, or DCC, lets you choose 5 different modes of operation. Now, the third component, the gear display, tells you what gear you're in or moving to and how to work the throttle during shifts. Working the throttle is the key to driving AutoSelect. You see, AutoSelect is constantly checking engine speed and truck speed to determine and shift to the best gear for any given situation. But it needs you to break driveline torque to make these shifts. You do that not with the clutch, but with the throttle. And you do it by reversing whatever you happen to be doing with the throttle. Backing off if you were on, getting on if you were off. It's simple. We'll get a feel for that in a few minutes. First, let's take a look at what you'll be working with. Let's climb into the cab and start with the driver command console. You'll find that there are 3 forward selections: D for normal drive operation, H for hold, and L for low. Now, you'll find yourself using D for normal over-the-road driving. H, or hold, lets you hold or remain in a gear until you decide to shift out of that gear. You can select hold anytime, whether you're in neutral or moving. Maybe you're in slow stop-and-go traffic or maneuvering around the truck stop. Situations where you don't want or need to be concerned with a lot of up and down shifts. Hold lets you override AutoSelect to stay in a gear or shift to another using upshift and downshift buttons located on the side of the shift lever handle. This way you can operate AutoSelect as you would a regular manual transmission. Now, since AutoSelect defaults to second gear for normal takeoffs, you might want to use these buttons to change your starting gear to first if you're fully loaded, or third if you're lightly loaded or bobtailing. Now, the third forward position on your driver command console, L for low, engages and holds the lowest gear when selected from a stop, or when the truck is moving. Selecting low causes the transmission to downshift at higher engine speeds to maximize engine braking. Our next position, R, puts you in reverse, and N is neutral. And it's where you want to be for startup and shutdown. Now, there are two other things you'll find here on the DCC: a wait light and a service transmission light. The wait light comes on briefly at startup, asking you to wait while the system checks itself out. You won't be able to engage the transmission while this light is on. The service transmission light will alert you in the event of a system problem. The DCC also generates an audible tone when AutoSelect senses the need for a shift, and the tone corresponds with the visual cue you'll be getting from the gear display. Now, the gear display guides you through each shift. A solid display tells you what gear you're in. When AutoSelect calls for a shift, arrows appear telling you what to do with the throttle after braking torque. Arrows pointing up tell you to brake torque and then get on the throttle. Arrows pointing down say brake torque and then back off of the throttle. The display flashes, telling you what gear AutoSelect is shifting to, and the display stops flashing, showing that the transmission has engaged that gear. These are your controls. Now, let's look at how to use them. To make things easier to follow, we're going to slow the process down and split the screen so that you can get a good look at your throttle response to AutoSelect signals. Let's assume you just started up and are in second gear. Okay, you move out and you're on the throttle. Engine speed increases to where AutoSelect senses it's time to shift into third and signals you with a tone. Let's pause for a minute. That signal means AutoSelect is asking you to brake torque. You do that, as we said earlier, by reversing what you were doing with the throttle. Okay, let's continue. On the tone, the gear display will show the number 3, which tells you that AutoSelect wants to shift to third gear. Also, arrows appear on the display pointing down, asking you to back off the throttle or reduce engine speed. Since you were on the throttle, back off to brake torque. There's no need to jump off the pedal, just back off slowly. The arrows remain on until engine speed drops sufficiently for synchronization. When it does, the transmission engages. The arrows turn off and we're back to a solid gear display, this time of the new gear. The shift is over and you're back on the throttle. All right, let's add another tool to the picture that can make shifting with AutoSelect even easier: your tachometer. With AutoSelect, the key to a successful shift is, as we said, manipulating the throttle, but you also have to be sure that you let the engine fall off enough to achieve synchronization. Let's pick up where we left off in third gear and take it up to top gear, but this time we'll include the tach. It's your choice to follow the arrows or the tach in deciding when to get back on the throttle. We'll roll the tape slowly at first so you get a sense of shift rhythm. Then we'll speed things up until we've reached normal speed. All right, we accelerate for the shift into fourth. We get the signal to shift, brake torque. The arrows say, stay off the throttle. The target gear is flashing. We have engagement, a solid gear display, and we're back on the throttle. Accelerate, signal, brake torque, engagement, back on the throttle, and so on. As you get more comfortable with AutoSelect, you'll probably work the throttle successfully just by listening to engine fall-off, just as many of you do today when shifting a standard Road Ranger. And we've successfully shifted up to top gear and did so with just the throttle. That's the story on upshifting with AutoSelect. Now, what about downshifting? All right, first we'll take a look at downshifting on the flat, then power downshifts. Let's say we're running at highway speeds on the flat in top gear and want to slow down. We may be coasting or braking. Either way, we're off the throttle. As vehicle speed slows, AutoSelect signals for a downshift. Okay, let's pause. Now remember, to brake torque, we do the opposite of what we were doing with the throttle. We were backing off, so to brake torque, we get on the throttle. Notice the arrows point up, which says AutoSelect wants you to stay on the pedal to reach synchronous. As we do, engine speed increases and we achieve engagement. Let's look at it again. AutoSelect calls for the shift. Brake torque by pushing on the pedal, which also acts to synchronize the transmission. Now, let's just follow it down to the starting gear in real time. Power downshifting has you working the throttle a little different. Take a look. Here, we're moving uphill, and the truck is beginning to lug. AutoSelect senses this and calls for a downshift. To brake torque, we need to briefly back off. You'll have to get on the throttle to synchronize the transmission's downshift. As we do, the transmission successfully engages, and we have a solid gear display. All right, let's take it down once more. AutoSelect signals, and the shift's complete. Now that you know the basics, let's take AutoSelect on the road. We've asked Bob, an Eaton test driver and member of Eaton's customer service team, to take us through the gears and give us some tips. Bob, they're all yours.
Thanks, bud. All right, before you start the engine, you want to check your parking brakes, make sure they're set, make sure your shift lever's in neutral, and push the clutch in. You let AutoSelect go through its self-check, and then you're all set. You have to let the clutch out before you select the starting gear. That lets the AutoSelect register an input speed in the transmission. Okay. Push your clutch in, and then select one of your starting shift lever positions. As we talked about, you can select either drive or hold or low. If you select drive or hold, you can use the up and the downshift buttons to select your starting gear. For instance, we're in drive now, and it'll default to 2 every time on power up. I can push the upshift button to use third as a starting gear, or I could hit the downshift button to use first as a starting gear if I was maybe heavily loaded and on a hill. In this case, I'll just stick with second. When you're ready to go, release your parking brakes, hold your service brakes, and then just start to let the clutch out. Again, the tone comes on to tell you it's time for a shift. Back off the throttle to brake torque and to synchronize for the next gear. The arrows will tell you which direction to take the engine and how long to take it in that direction. When the arrows go off the display, you get back on the throttle, and that completes your shift. Now notice that during the upshifts, we didn't use the clutch at all, and neither will we on the downshifts. However, anytime you bring the truck to a stop, or you select a starting gear from the stop, the clutch should be in. So basically, anytime you're in gear and at a stop, you should push the clutch in. Okay, when you're ready to downshift, the downshifts go like this. Again, you wait for the tone. When the tone sounds, you ease on the throttle. That brakes torque and synchronizes for the next gear. The arrows on the display, again, will tell you which direction to take the engine. And you have to continue increasing engine speed until those arrows are off the screen. That means you've synchronized for the next gear and the shift's complete. As you're slowing down, you don't always have to hit every gear on the way down. If you want to, you can let the AutoSelect choose to skip down 2 or maybe even 3 gears. And then again, just ease on the throttle, boost it up, and your shift's set. Now, as you're coming to a stop, if you're going to be parking your truck, then as you stop, push in your clutch and move the shift lever into neutral. Set your parking brake and then release the clutch. If you're shutting down, then you want to make sure your shift lever is in neutral before you turn the engine off. Okay, let's take the truck into some hills. Pulling uphill and the truck starts to lug down. Power downs are handled very similar to a manual. You get off the throttle to brake torque and then get back on to synchronize for the next gear. If you need to have more aggressive or higher downshift points, you can pull the shift lever back into hold and request the shift with the downshift button. Now, some upshifts going uphill. What you want to do is really accelerate into the shift. This will help give the truck the momentum it needs in order to complete the shift even though you're on the hill. You want to be careful not to run that engine up into the droop or you'll lose all that forward power that you have. The upshift and downshift buttons can also be used as a shift delay. When the AutoSelect calls for an upshift, you can hit the downshift button and that'll cancel that shift and push it out about another 50 RPM. That might be helpful if you're pulling a grade and you just want to finish pulling that hill without getting that last shift. The downshift side works the same way in that you can cancel or delay a downshift by hitting the upshift button. You can read more about that in your driver's instruction manual. Okay, now we're going to do some downshifts going downhill. Going downhill and engine braking with the AutoSelect, you want to pull your shift lever back into low, and that'll give you your highest shifts possible. This will keep your engine RPM nice and high and give you your maximum power out of the engine brake. once you're up to speed, you'll probably want to use your cruise control. To do so, you set it just like you normally would, and then move your shift lever into the hold position. This stops the AutoSelect from doing any shifts while you're on cruise. If you do need to shift or want to shift while you're on cruise control, you have to disengage the cruise first. Now, if you want to, you can also skip upshift with the AutoSelect. Move your shift lever into hold, press the upshift button twice to skip a gear. Then back off the throttle, let it fall off for twice what you normally would on an upshift, and get back on. Again, 2 upshift buttons, let it fall off, and get back on. If your truck's equipped with a PTO, operation's pretty similar to a manual transmission. With your shift lever in neutral, push your clutch in and turn your PTO on. Let your clutch out and you can run your PTO. If you want to do mobile operation, then what you have to do is engage a gear like we talked about earlier, push your clutch in, move your shift lever, and use hold for PTO operation. That'll make sure there's no shifts while you're running it. Turn your PTO on, and then let your clutch out for operation.
Your Eaton AutoSelect transmission is Eaton tough and also Eaton smart. If a problem does come up, AutoSelect has the ability to guide you to the information that will get you back on the road as quickly as possible. The service light on your driver command console will turn on to alert you to any problem. If this happens, you'll need to assess the situation. Is the problem serious enough to warrant your parking the truck, or can you safely make it to a service area? Once you're stopped, you'll need to retrieve the fault codes that will identify the problem. Here's how you do it. Again, stop the truck, put the gear shift in neutral, and set the parking brake. The AutoSelect displays the fault codes by flashing the transmission service lamp in sequences. 1 flash means number 1, 2 flashes means number 2, etc. So when you're ready, turn the key off on within 5 seconds. Don't worry if the engine stops. Just be careful not to engage the starter. Now, watch the lamp. It will flash 2-digit fault codes. For instance, the first code is 4 flashes, 3 flashes. That's code 43. There's a pause, then 3 flashes, 3 flashes. That's code 33. When the list is complete, it repeats. Be sure to write down fault codes so you can give them to the technician when you take your truck in for service. After you record the stored codes, you can reset the AutoSelect and get back on the road if you're not at a service area. To perform a reset, turn off the engine for at least 60 seconds. Then restart. Now, you may find that this reset corrects the problem, but if the reset doesn't clear the fault, perform the troubleshooting sequence in the back of your driver instruction booklet. This includes making sure you have enough air pressure, at least 90 psi, and the power circuit breakers or fuses are okay. If you're still having a problem and need personal assistance, you can always call your Eaton Road Ranger Support Network, 1-800-TCM-HELP, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, it always helps to take a last look at what we've learned. So, let's hit the high points one more time. Your AutoSelect is a world-class system built on the world-famous Eaton Road Ranger transmission. You'll start up and shut down in neutral with the clutch pedal depressed. Drive is for normal operation. Hold will keep you in a gear you choose. Low maximizes engine brake performance. As you power up, the wait light comes on while AutoSelect checks itself out. After startup, you may choose to set your own starting gear. Throttle play is everything, and it's easy does it. When AutoSelect calls for a shift, arrows on the gear display then tell you to stay off or get on the throttle to synchronize the transmission. Brake driveline torque by reversing what you were doing with the pedal. When the gear display locks solid, you've engaged the target gear. When upshifting on hills, we recommend you accelerate into the shift. You must be in hold to use cruise control, and you must disengage cruise control for the system to work through the gears. If there's a problem, the service transmission light will come on and you'll need to retrieve your flash codes and refer to your driver's instruction manual. And if you have questions, help is only a phone call away. 1-800-TCM-HELP. The AutoSelect transmission, a world-class product designed, built, and backed to help you get the most out of every road mile. Eaton, technology you can depend on.